Afternoon, both. How are we? I think you're muted, Sue.
That's twice I've done it. So, sorry about that. I did say to Rob earlier, and I think as one of the emails, I've got to just aspire to the heights of Chris Wallace during the presidential debate and the way he chaired it. I think I've managed just slightly above Chris Wallace, but there we go. It might just be me and Ken then. I don't know how many parish, town, community councils are going to join us.
No, and I must admit, I've certainly no intel on that either. So I can ask Nicola if that'd be helpful. But
no, we'll just wait and see.
No problem.
Ken, how are things with you?
Fine, thanks. Except we're in a really, really dangerous place at the moment.
In terms of our Wood Council?
No, it's in terms of
the
COVID.
country. Yeah. And certainly our response group locally, which we've supported as a Burntwood Town Council. I mean, just for your understanding, Andy, I'm an opposition councillor at the county council. I was group leader until the beginning of the year, but then I decided I wanted to put my effort into Burntwood Town Council, which Labour took control of last May, and I became leader because it just seemed to me that that's where the action's happening at very local level. And that's come through that sort of mutual aid group session that we had I don't know which session you were on, Ken, but what I was proud of really was that the town council was in a position where it could facilitate that very early response, because I'd got people coming to me saying, what can we do? This was sort of beginning of March, well before lockdown. And we were able to set up a group called Be a Friend with, support from a local children's centre run by parents, by 2 local churches who were very active in the community, and by the town council. So the town council was able to apply for a COVID support fund that our county council mobilised very quickly. It was only £2,500 per councillor. But me and my Conservative colleague in Burntwood decided to pool our resources, that £5,000, which the council applied for, and then distributed to the 2 main local response groups. So one was Burntwood Be a Friend, which has been doing shopping and prescription collecting and, every question that under the sun, including one that came to me was, do you know someone who can do German conversation lessons? Because my father's missing his German conversation lessons through U3A. And I managed to find a friend who was a languages teacher, and she said straight away, yes, I'll do chats with him. So, every question that's come along. And then Burntwood Live at Home scheme, which is the home service for Methodist homes for the aged. So, the 2,500 was split between the 2, and they've just sort of continued their support. So I think town and parish councils have been in a position to make a really sort of speedy, agile, responsive and network support for those community volunteer groups.
Would you say that it's fallen down at a national level rather than a local level then?
Oh gosh, yes.
I'd agree 100% on that. Yes, totally.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give one example, and that was, when Marcus Rashford was campaigning for free school meals over the summer. Robert Jenrick on June the 6th, I think it was. No, it wasn't D-Day. It might have been June the 11th. I'll give him a few days leeway. He announced a fund for food and basic essentials. And it took me, and I was constantly pushing the county council on, where is this fund for food and basic essentials? And they knew I wasn't going to go away. You know what Staffordshire Bull Terriers are like, and I'm a bit like that. So eventually the county council did use I think it was 870,000, something like that they received from that food and basic essentials pot. The guidance didn't come out until late July, and then the county council sort of mobilised. They spent part of that on emergency food parcels, which they retained centrally so that they could pass out to people in need. They spent part of it on with districts on supporting, for example, homeless people. But the bulk of it, £600,000 of that, was spent on food vouchers, these Eden Red food vouchers, which were distributed through the County Council's children's centres, one per district. Now, one of the problems with that, I mean, that's great, and so people on, you know, a range of benefits, but particularly people on universal credit can apply for one of those food vouchers, and that makes a huge difference. So I came across a family last week who, just chatting, said, you know, I really valued the £15 food vouchers for free school meals, you know, when they were available, and they still are available. Yeah, I'll send you the link. Yeah, but this isn't an emergency because it's been badged as emergency food assistance. So people think to themselves, well, I'm not in dire and immediate need. You know, I've got these financial pressures, but I'm not in that sort of emergency need. But I managed to get through the system, and that family now has got its £15 a week food vouchers. But it's partly about the way that's been badged by the county council. I think they were trying to dampen access to that supply. 600,000 doesn't go very far in terms of £15 a week vouchers, but you know, I think they've been quite protective, and it was interesting in the mutual aid session that people were talking about overcoming that sort of protectiveness and that sort of inward looking situation. But you know, I just think parish councils have been ideally placed for all of this work.
Yeah, no, as someone who doesn't know a lot about kind of local government, it's interesting to kind of sit in as a tech person today and kind of listen to various presentations and people speaking about things, because as you said from the session earlier and from what you've just said now, it does seem that at a local level it's working, but then at a national level it's obviously falling down. So it's very interesting to hear from people who are kind of on the ground trying to mobilise responses to this awful pandemic.
We set up one of our community centres as a community hub and moved the local food bank into that as well to make it easier, which is, I say easier, I'm a voucher holder. I go out to food bank every Saturday, so in case anybody needs a voucher, turns up without one, you know. But I was stuck on 14, 15 weeks lockdown, so I couldn't get near it anyway. But yeah. But that worked for us. It worked very well, very, very well for us, because we got a lot of funding in from other sources, because we were working as the hub, if you see what I mean, for the whole area. And as I say, it worked very well indeed.
Yeah. You know, and so I think the value of parish councils was shown. I noticed that Claire Gamble is with us on this call. Claire, do you want to introduce yourself? And there are only 4 of us together, but you know, small is beautiful.
Thank you.
I'm glad you said that, because I'm going to Slimming World at the moment. So
well done, well done.
Hi, Sue. Good to see you again. Hello, everybody. Yeah, my name is Claire Gamble, and I am the chairman at Billingham Town Council, as well as a borough council for Stockton Borough Council that I'm desperately trying to get to join the CCIN network as a full member also. But yeah, we've done so much work around COVID, that's along with other local groups that have really allowed us to sort of like re-establish, consolidate existing relationships that we've had, create new ones. So we looked at, we run a cafe in our park right in the centre of Billingham, and that was closed down during COVID. So we worked with the local youth club and the local boxing club to deliver food parcels, prescriptions, in conjunction with our borough council as part of the COVID response. And once that was set up, the other thing that, you know, sorry, I'm just trying to put my phone on silent, is one thing that's been my real baby throughout this has been delivery of hot food to residents that were shielding, because one of the things that we identified early on is, it's great getting them food parcels and things, but it's all non-perishable goods. And so we introduced a Sunday lunch delivery service that, also went on Wednesdays. We still call it a Sunday lunch, but it went on Wednesdays, which gave them access to, good quality fresh meat, fresh vegetables. And actually we identified a real need there in terms of non-COVID service, and so that's something that as a town council we're continuing to fund right up. At the moment we've extended the funding until the end of the year, but are looking at how we can continue to deliver that as a long-term service. But it's been really exciting listening to the last session, some of the mutual aid groups, and get other ideas, because I think for me that's the most important thing, is helping our communities now, but how do we extend those services to continue to deliver to those residents that need it outside of COVID. Sorry, that was a very long introduction, but that's me.
No, and I think
sorry, we were very lucky actually. He's talking about hot food. We were very lucky, and a charity organisation that runs a separate centre in Halewood that's not one of ours. They set up. They got a lot of funding from goodness knows where, including some from us, and they were delivering a hot meal 3 times a day, 3 times a week, to people, particularly shielded, but people just basically anybody who needed it, if you see what I mean. And they were delivering something like 200 meals, hot meals, every. Oh, listen. Go away. They were delivering hot meals on a regular basis, 3 days a week, all through the lockdown. And it took a lot of the pressure off us, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I'll have to stop that from.
And I think what you said, Claire, really about providing hot meals and perishable foods is important, because certainly the county council's response in our area, they hired a huge warehouse type space at county showgrounds, the agricultural space, and filled it with lots of tin goods, and were congratulating themselves when they reached 1,000 food parcels, and that was sort of 3 months into the crisis. And yet on the ground, we were able as a parish council to sort of kickstart, pump prime, pass on information, ensure that people were in the loop in terms of what was happening at district and county level. But the people on the ground were doing this stuff, and it sort of grew organically, really. So one group who'd been providing hot meals at the children's centre, volunteers, for sort of an after-school club, they diverted and worked with a local pub who were just brilliant in providing hot meals and dessert as well, to about 1,000 people a week. And that was, we've got, the town population is 28,000, something like that. So that was just amazing. And the people who benefited from that were great. And just as an example of how volunteers can get, really positive experiences through volunteering, one of the things that they were doing, they got loads of bread from Fair Share and from supermarket donations. So I started making bread pudding. Yep. So I don't know if you know what bread pudding is, you perhaps do, but very old fashioned. Yeah. But the older, particularly older single people living alone, they loved this bread pudding. I couldn't make it quickly enough. It was sort of industrial scale bread pudding making, and so I couldn't get the dried fruit or the mixed spice quickly enough to get it out. So that was one aspect of it. But what's happening now, and again, I think this is about so making sure you help, support, facilitate, but you don't try to hold all the reins. So a couple of organisations are now sort of growing out of the Be a Friend, if you like, umbrella. One is a repair cafe, because of course during lockdown people were starting to do more handiwork, craftwork, DIY, that sort of thing. And so there's been a need, and also people have things breaking down and need someone to help to fix their whatever. And so the idea of a repair cafe to particularly meet the needs of men, you know, and all the mental health problems associated with men, particularly young men. So that repair cafe started to take off. But also a community gardening group, and this has been long on my wish list, that I've wanted to see community gardens happening in my town, you know, from the example of Todmorden. I don't know whether you know of Todmorden Parish Council and their incredible edible project, which, you know, if you Google Todmorden incredible edible, you'll see it. And basically it was allowing people to take over little patches of green space, dig them up, plant spare vegetables, so courgettes and tomatoes and things like that, and then the community just going and helping themselves to, you know, the fruit that's there. So we've got this allotments group. It's just setting up. It's and we as a town council have been able to sort of put them in touch with the voluntary sector support organisation to get their constitution sorted, and they're getting their bank accounts, because you have to go through those boring and clunky steps, don't you, to sort of use as a platform. And so they've got a number of ideas now about, you know, taking over little bits. Well, things like the planters that the town council usually provide across the town at the entrances to the town. I'm trying to encourage them to take responsibility for the planters. So rather than the town council paying for, you know, whatever boring plants the district council operational services decide to put in, you know, they can take ownership of that and put much more exciting, you know, plant displays there, right from there, right through to facilitating the use of an allotment. You know, they started off by saying there are no allotments available in Burntwood. Well, our town clerk found that there are actually 4 allotments vacant at the moment in Burntwood, and we could take over and pay for the first year's rental of one of those allotments for 76 quid. That would enable this allotments group to just sort of test the water as to whether there really is the sort of enthusiasm for allotments in the town that they're sort of, they think there might be. And then also things like in the town council offices, we've got a backyard that's not being used, so we've suggested either raised beds or those big gravel bags. I saw a documentary on TV a long time ago where a block of flats in London have got these gravel bags, you know, the sort of thing where sand and gravel are delivered to by a big crane. Those big gravel bags can be filled with soil and used as little mini allotments, if you like, and we've got space for about half a dozen of those at the town council offices. So, you know, we want this group to just, they call themselves the Diggers as well now, which is great. And so, you know, we want them to, you know, forge their own path ahead. We don't want to be doing it for them. It's quite difficult in a sense to sort of, you know, loose the reins and say off you go, because they're coming back with some quite unrealistic expectations now. You know, the council can buy a piece of open public space and stick some allotments there. No, that's not going to happen because we can't afford it. And, you know, the uproar about closing in public open space for allotments would be, you know, massive. We might think allotments are a great idea, but they can look quite ugly, can't they? So sort of trying to guide them without stifling their creativity and making them sort of follow a path for us is a bit of a challenge, but, you know, hopefully we'll get through that. But it's great that we can facilitate, and of course through our grant aid scheme we're able to give them that little bit of support to buy wood for raised beds and so on. So I'm really quite chuffed in that. Oh, and a baby bank as well. What emerged was, you know, all these women having babies through COVID and finding it really difficult to access the sort of, you know, equipment and so on that they want. We've set up a baby bank as well, and bought a container to not Be a Friend. When I say we, not the town council, Be a Friend, this sort of umbrella group, have bought a container to store, you know, spare baby items so that we can give out packs to women who find themselves in difficulties following birth of a child. quite exciting, really.
That's a really good idea. I like the idea of the town council taking over the allotment. That's something that I hadn't considered before as an option. We do have one of our really underprivileged, like it's almost like a mini village within our town, is have a community garden, which was set up by our Environmental Link project, which is another organisation in the town, and that works really well. You know, there's no fees or anything attached to it. They tend the community plots, and as a thank you, they're given their own little plot as well. So before they're allowed to attend their own plot, which is rent free, their payment is to tend the community plots, and that works really well. We have a garden in our cafe, which we're looking to do something similar, and again engaging with the Environmental Link program. But actually, going back to the bread and butter pudding, we had a similar situation. We were given by Tesco's loaves and loaves of bread and 2 big crates of bananas. So we did a banana bread and butter pudding, which worked really well. With but yeah, it's just the amount of creativity in terms of using up donated ingredients has been fascinating. But yeah, I agree about the brains, isn't it? Because I am one of these people that I like to be in control, and I have found it really difficult to hand over stuff to other stakeholders and say, actually, will you run with this bit, and then.
Hey, we're councillors, we find it difficult to give control, don't we, in that sense, you know, and let people get on with it. But, you know, I think that's sort of, if you like, role just slightly in the background so that you're steering them in a direction, but you're not doing it yourself, I think is great. I mean, one of the other lovely sort of synergies that has emerged out of all of this is that, you know, the food bank is part of Burntwood Be a Friend, and you know they've been really concerned about, you know, not enough fresh food and so on. And so this gardening group now have been joined by some of the people who are, you know, directly involved in the food bank, and they're seeing the opportunities to grow cabbages over the winter, for example, or sprouts for Christmas, so that people aren't given, if you like, a tinned turkey pie and a tin of peas for their Christmas dinner, but they might get fresh vegetables, you know, and that sort of interconnection has just been amazing. So, you know, I think, again, as the town council, we probably are linked into far more networks than any individual group or organisation, voluntary group or organisation in the town. And so just sort of helping that to happen. You know, again, another example of that sort of interconnectedness. We've got a cricket club within the town who were bequeathed grounds on which to play cricket, but they haven't really been able to maintain the grounds completely as they'd like to, and they've had ambitions to refurbish their pretty rundown clubhouse. Now, you know, again, a new chair has come forward and got in touch with me because he said, you know, I want to be connected. I want the club to be connected far more with the community, and the community to take far more ownership in the club, because you get that sort of added value, don't you? And this was just at the time when the first meeting of the allotments group was happening. So, you know, I went to visit him, socially distanced and all that, at the cricket club. And there are several areas around the cricket club grounds that they just haven't been able to, you know, they haven't been able to use very effectively. It's just sort of scrubland. And one area he'd like to see as a community garden. So we were able to put the two groups directly in touch, and Matthew, this new cricket club chair, came and presented to the allotments group. They were so excited, and they've been down to have a look at it. And, you know, that just looks like an area that, again, sort of making sure they take small steps to start off with. You know, they'll realise the ambition one day. I'm sure I might not be here, but one day I'm sure they'll have enough resource to buy a big piece of land on which to put allotments. But, you know, taking over that patch of land and developing that as a community garden will be a really positive first step, and prove both the cricket club and the allotments group, the diggers, have got that sort of community buy-in and that sort of momentum that will put them in good stead for applying for grants as well, because you can't just apply for a grant because you fancy one. You know, you've got to prove that sort of community connection, community buy-in. So, you know, these are all just so positive, you know, the all of these interlinkages, I think.
When it comes to all these amazing community projects that you've all talked about throughout this kind of session, what are going to be the biggest barriers, do you think, to continuing these, you know, as we approach, God forbid, like a second wave and all that? What's going to be like the biggest barriers to that community spirit carrying on? Or, you know, will people retrench back to how it was? What are you each doing in your different communities to make sure that there's, I guess, a legacy from all of this and it carries on?
So I'll let Claire and Ken answer that first. Claire, do you want to have a go at that one?
Yeah, I think, I mean, certainly right now, our biggest challenge is maintaining volunteer numbers. You know, as people start to go back, as people started to go back to work, you know, we saw a real drop in the number of volunteers, and that's probably our biggest limitation in terms of what numbers we can reach at the moment.
That's interesting, that, because we found exactly the opposite. That the volunteers, and there were an awful lot of volunteers in Halewood, obviously, that they've all said, "Oh, can we carry on? Is there something else we can do?" They've got the bug, you know. They want to keep going.
Yeah, it's been interesting because we have seen a drop in volunteer numbers because people are going back to work, as Claire said, but also that they do still want to continue. I forget who it was earlier on today in the plenary session who said that, you know, younger volunteers are coming forward, and that's been our experience as well. That, okay, we've got retired people who are running the telephone helpline, for example, but it's mainly younger people who've been doing the shops and the deliveries and the collecting prescriptions and so on, and they really do want to continue. So, you know, we've got to make sure that we sort of just capture that and take it forward. But, you know, those clunky things like setting up a voluntary organisation and setting up a bank account, you know, they're fraught with difficulty. Having set up a voluntary organisation myself a couple of years ago, trying to get a bank account was just like, you know, asking for blood out of a stone. It was really difficult. So, you know, if we as councillors can help and guide them and advise them that it's not going to happen overnight, you know, so those expectations, I think it's managing those. I think one of the other things as well for me is that sense in which, you know, the district council and the county council, because of their financial pressures, specifically, you know, particularly on the county council with adult social care, they'll retrench and forget that, you know, the local response groups are still wanting to operate. And I just, and again, because of austerity, they haven't got the staff, they haven't got the, you know, sort of community workers that they used to have who can sort of pick that up. But, you know, I think that's going to be a real challenge for the county council to have that political bravery that Tom referred to just say, well, you know what, parish councils can do this more effectively, more cost effectively, more efficiently than we can, so let's just devolve some resources down there, you know. And again, in the context of discussions around local government reorganisation, you know, we're a two-tier area, as it's called. We're actually a three-tier area because the third tier is the parish and community councils. And they seem to be invisible. Our councils seem to be invisible in discussions about local government reorganisation. So sort of flying the flag for parish councils and what they can achieve, I think, is important for us collectively through CCIN.
Yeah, because it sounds like there's some amazing kind of case study stuff here as well, in terms of, you know, writing all this up and documenting it so that you've got evidence to show people like what's happened in your various areas, really.
I started writing a diary at the beginning of COVID and thought I could do 2 or 3 minutes a day. That went by the board after 2 or 3 months because it was, I don't know about Ken and Claire, but I've just found it so busy and almost relentless. You know, I'll wake up and think, oh, my diary is clear this morning. That's great. I'll do, you know, something interesting. And the phone doesn't stop ringing. You know, I mean, sitting here, you know, I'm getting WhatsApp messages and text messages and messenger messages asking questions of me, you know. And I did at one point fear that, you know, my own capacity was going to suffer. And I put on Facebook Messenger, I put, can you please email me? Because I'm getting so many messages from so many platforms. I just can't manage them all successfully. But people just get in touch with you in any which way. I don't know whether you found that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I kept saying, you know, people are at home, furloughed, is you know, county our borough council meetings were all cancelled. Town council meetings were cancelled. I was like, but actually, I have never been so busy. I was working like 15-hour days,
Yeah.
dealing with residents, dealing with local voluntary groups. It was, you know, and I don't regret a minute of it. You know, it's but it was literally the busiest 6 months of my life from March onwards. Is you know, starting to settle back down because we've got a real good structure now, and but yeah, very, very busy.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, you know, September you start back in the round of council meetings. So I'm a county councillor and a town councillor. I used to be town, district and county, so I gave up my district seat last time round. So at least it's only 2 councils worth of meetings. But again, one of the things that we found as a town council, when we took control last May, there were 11 different subcommittees, all sort of working to different terms of reference and goodness knows what. So we simplified things and opened it up in a sense that we just went down to 3 committees: policy and resources, community partnerships, planning and development. And so these 3 committees with delegated powers just fed into full council. Well, we were quite early on getting a full council Zoom meeting set up. That was a feather in our cap, because we were the first council in Staffordshire county, district or parish to have an actual Zoom meeting. So that was good to know. But what we found is that, I suppose we've always known this, that because meetings are scheduled, the agendas become, you know, full because they're there. And what we've managed to do is change it so that we have very few committee meetings. Sometimes the planning committee meetings met if there's been a big urgent planning discussion, but we've managed to do everything through the full council meeting. So the full council meeting now, rather than receiving reports from the committees and ratifying decisions and everything else, we're using them too for presentations and also, you know, for discussions. So options around what we're going to do for Christmas and that sort of thing. So we've reduced the number of meetings, but I think they're actually more effective, and it makes you wonder that, you know, perhaps politics hates a vacuum as much as anything else, you know, and that we fill these agendas full of stuff simply because they're there. So that's been a learning point as well, I think.
We never used committees for years and years, and then recently we've just formed one committee for policy and finance, which as it happens, I chair. And the going with no committees is great, but just very occasionally something comes up, and by providing a policy and finance, we've actually got a little bit of a safety net there, just in case we miss something. If someone's going to miss out, you know.
Yeah. But it's certainly enabled us to be a bit more fleet of foot, I think, as well. So only the things that really need decisions come to council. And because we'd set up the delegation of authority and those terms of reference and framework last year, it's just enabled us to work far more quickly. So, for example, I mean, I mentioned the town council applied for this £5,000 worth of county council grant. What we were able to do even before that was give them £1,000, £500 for each of the organisations, under that sort of delegated authority to spend up to £1,000. You know, just and I do include the leader of the opposition. I mean, it's a small opposition group, yeah, but I do include the leader of the opposition group there because I think it's important that, you know, he's part of that decision-making process. So, you know, it just makes things quicker, easier, more streamlined, you know, rather than trying to make every decision by committee. Hi, Adam.
Hiya, how you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. We're just discussing generally the role of parish, town, community councils. Claire's from Billingham, Kenny's from Halewood, I'm from Burntwood, as you know. You've been in the opposition Fringe meeting, I think, haven't you?
Yeah, I thought I'd jump into this one as Polesworth Parish Council's the latest.
The latest. Yeah. Do you want to say a word or two about, you know, the role that Polesworth's played in what's been happening and challenges and opportunities and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I can do. So Polesworth is a majority-controlled Labour cooperative council. It has been Labour-controlled forever. We have no other councillors of any other party have been elected at any level in Polesworth, which is a great joy of mine. So we're completely one-party village.
Do you fight amongst yourselves, though?
Well, this is where the problem lies. We don't fight amongst ourselves politically. What we do have is a group of new people who are driving forward the Labour cooperative agenda, and a group of older members who are driving forward a different sort of agenda, very wary, very risk averse, very sort of, we can't do that because we've always done it this way. But we're getting to a point now where we've joined CCIN, we win every vote, they always agree with us in the end. But we're moving from being quite a small parish to a parish that in the next 10 years is going to more than double in size because of the local plan. We're going to become the biggest town in the borough. And, we've got a lot of people to look after. We've got a lot of services that we deliver as a parish council. But we want to sort of harness what's happened over the last few months with the community spirit and COVID-19. We've had 65, 70 volunteers come forward to form this support network using our facilities. From scratch, they've all cooperated together to deliver a new service completely from scratch. And I said in the previous meeting, they've delivered more in terms of food parcels and supported more people than the council's official shielding hub did. So, Polesworth volunteers have done a fantastic job. So we want to get involved in the network to start to turn our thinking away from dog poo and litter towards community development and what does cooperation look like post COVID-19? Because it is going to be very different. Our council ran a village hall that some of the older councillors are desperate to get back into use, like absolutely desperate for what I can see, absolutely no good reason. Just because it's always been run as let's rent it out as a meeting space doesn't mean it always has to be. At the moment, we've got the food bank in there where more people are going through that building every week now than have ever gone through it before. So why are we so desperate to turn it back into a meeting room that lies empty 80% of the week? So we're interested in that discussion.
Yeah, we've got a similar challenge really, because we lease on a peppercorn rent basis what was an old college. It's called the Old Mining College. It's always been called the Old Mining College, and there was no way we were going to change the name when it became the town council premises. But what's happened through COVID is that we've seen that our staff are spending an inordinate amount of time on running the premises. So it's a full maintenance and repairs lease. We spent £75,000 last year on repairing the boilers. We've had to spend shed loads of money on things like asbestos removal and so on, because the previous administration did bugger all, basically. And we're starting to think, well, actually, what value does having these premises add Oh, that's my town clerk calling, but he'll have to wait. But we've realised that just sort of checking through all of the budgets, it costs us £65,000 a year in revenue to have that facility. And we don't really get £65,000 worth of community value out of it. So the very fact that they were all working remotely anyway, it's made us wonder whether we should just hand the keys back to the county council, which would be a massive political gamble, I have to say. But we could operate from a desk in the library, and that would give us resource to employ a community development officer, for example, that could do some of the exciting and interesting work. But at the moment, you know, we've lost income because groups using the building just haven't been. You know, Live at Home is a big user of the building for services for people with dementia and so on. So we haven't got the revenue from there. There are some business units at the back which historically just came along with the territory. Again, tenants are giving notice to quit because, you know, they've found that they can work from home rather than paying rental on those units. So we're losing revenue. We've also not spent as much as we might have done on all sorts of things around the town. So it's a really fluid situation as we go into the budget making period. You know, we've got some challenges, but there are also some opportunities, and you're probably in similar positions yourselves.
Yeah, we definitely are. And I think there's a huge opportunity for CCIN to get more parish and town councils involved, because I don't think you need to be Labour and cooperative councillors to want to change the parish and town council sector, because there is this, whatever council I've met, there's always a couple of newbies on there that are like, I can't believe the way it operates. It's stuck in the 80s. You know, what's going on? I try and suggest anything.
The 1880s.
Well, yeah, and they everyone, you know, the favourite line of old parish councillors or, you know, experienced parish councillors, we tried that, didn't work. Well, actually, I think through this sort of network, you could start to get independent parish councils who, you know, believe in cooperative values. Might not necessarily be Labour voters or Labour councillors, but you can believe in cooperative values and not be a member of the Labour Party. You know, they're not mutually exclusive. So I think there's lots of work that we could do as a network to get more town and parish councils signed up, because, you know, the possibilities of this sector are endless. They have huge amounts of money, very few statutory responsibilities, and a lot of resource, you know, a lot of local knowledge, a lot of community buildings, and, you know, we get things done cheaper than district or county councils. So, you know, why are we not doing more? I think there's something like it's £1 billion our sector has every year to spend, and I'm not sure we individually all spend that particularly wisely.
Just on that.
You're right, of course. We're right on the sharp end, aren't we?
Yeah.
But the town and parish council seem to be the first one that people will approach, because we are in the community, and the borough and district councils are thought to be somewhere over there, sort of thing, you know.
Yeah.
Just on that, you know, of course, we're the only tier of local government that isn't capped, and so, you know, in a sense, we can reach for the moon. You know, that if we wanted to, we could raise revenue through council tax. But of course, you've always got that tension, haven't you? If you raise it by, you know, more than twopence halfpenny, you're going to take a hit politically. You know, we have got an opposition who want to work cooperatively, but with the approaching county council elections, and we've got a couple of by-elections, they're starting to manufacture arguments that aren't real arguments, but manufacturing for the purposes of putting in the press. And, you know, I mean, there was a proposal that we spend £400 to get some sort of Christmas card. It was only a proposal for a range of things for Christmas. Just something through the doors of everyone in the town, you know, particularly those who are not on Facebook or whatever, just giving them, you know, people that they can contact for help, like Be a Friend and so on, and councillors' numbers and so on. And they made such a fuss and palaver about this potential 400 quid, you just wouldn't believe. And the language was so ridiculously overblown. So, you know, the press release was, I am extremely disappointed by this proposal. You know, you're extremely disappointed by the government's failure to do test and trace. You're not extremely disappointed about 400 quid on a Christmas card, you know. So it was completely overblown. So this is what we've got to face over the next 6 months. You know, I would love to raise the council tax to pay for a community development worker, for example. But you always face that real issue. One of the challenges we got last year is that the district council want to pass over responsibility for parks to us as a town council. And I think, again, there's a great opportunity there to take some sort of ownership and be masters of our own destiny. But of course it costs. There's also the issue of public toilets. The district council own and run the public toilets locally. We said that, you know, it's a priority for us to make sure those toilets are kept open. So we'd put some money in the budget in order to enable that. But of course, there are bigger challenges now with things like toilets during COVID. But, you know, if you, we're talking about parish polls, you know, to test the water. But, you know, as soon as you start saying, we're going to raise the council tax by more than, say, 10%, you get this backlash, even though 10% is, you know, very, very small beer. And, you know, I just get the feeling that our opposition group will capitalise on any 200 or 500 quid we want to spend. They'll nod through, you know, £300,000 for the third Lichfield City master plan. You know, they'll nod that through, but 400 quid at our end, they're going to oppose. So some of those political difficulties, I don't know whether Claire and Ken have got any sort of opposition difficulties.
No, have you got all day? we were 100% Labour Council all the way through. And then last year, I won't go into too much detail, but there was a proposal from we lease a lot of land from the Borough Council, about 4 or 5 open spaces sort of thing. And they decided they wanted us to give them the leases back because they wanted to they couldn't afford the parks, basically. So they said, if we sell off 10% of the parks, we can use that, the money we get from that, we'll pay, the interest from it will pay what we need to keep the parks, the rest of the parks going, which sounded a good idea on paper, but it didn't work because the local rabble rousers, if you like, managed to jump onto the bandwagon. And there are 2 wards, North Ward and South Ward. I'm in North, with 6 councillors in each in Halewood. And the 6 councillors in North Ward kept their seats last year, and the other 6 lost them all, and they all went to independents. And I'm not being, I shouldn't possibly be saying this, but they're not there for the community. They're there for an ego trip because they came in on, oh, we've saved the parks. They didn't save anything in that, you know, and we've had nothing but trouble since. And we've now, they've decided, we as a Labour council for about 4 years were discussing whether we should have a neighbourhood plan. And we decided it just wasn't worthwhile because there was too much involved in the local plan for the Borough Council in this area anyway. So, but they put it as part of their manifesto, and now we're now spending a fortune on a neighbourhood plan that I know nobody's going to have a read or look at or be interested in. And it's causing chaos because basically, because as I say, they're not there for the community. They say they are, obviously, but they're there purely on an ego trip. That's all they're interested in. I'm a councillor. They don't do anything. They turn up for meetings occasionally. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, we know what you mean. Absolutely. I mean, it's the normal distribution curve, isn't it? You know,
yeah.
You've got some councillors working really hard, some councillors doing nothing, you know, and every shade in between. But folks, I'm conscious of the fact that it's just after 1 o'clock and it's been a long morning really, and probably you're all waiting for your lunch. I just wanted to ask about some sort of practical things. I don't know how you feel, but I just find I get too many emails from CCIN. And, you know, I understand that everybody wants to cooperate and share information and everything else, but I just, can I say, I just feel as though I get too many emails. And one of the things about the WhatsApp groups, I just wondered whether people will vote with their feet, because you can get too many WhatsApp messages as well, and just some feel for how you think it, you know, taking up Adam's point about what can the CCIN do to empower more parish and town and community councils. You know, what's the best way for us to communicate, do you think?
So I was really excited about the WhatsApp group when it was first set up, but actually I find that there's nothing happens there, and
That's my fault.
I don't know if that's like a promotional issue or, but certainly for my part, I think more things like this, like, and I don't mean a whole conference, but you know, online sessions which are around a specific topic, even if it's just, you know, they do a different topic each month, just so that you get the chance to interact with people. Because I think part of the issue with the WhatsApp group is that we don't know each other, you know, we don't all know each other, I think, and so it's not people's default to go think, oh, well, I'll ask in the WhatsApp group what's somebody's opinion on that, or I'm having this problem, I wonder if anyone else has. Whereas I think more of these would facilitate that relationship building, which might then prompt more activity into the WhatsApp group. Yeah.
I have a problem because anything from the CCIN doesn't go to the town council. It comes to me because I'm the lead. So I get the lot and have to pass it on. So I know where you're coming from in terms of emails.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. You know, if we're, as the CCIN grows, I mean, I'm vice chair of the Values and Principles Board, which acts as a sort of scrutiny board for the Executive Oversight Committee. So we'll, you know, have a look at things and then make recommendations to the EOC. But part of this arose about, you know, we've got growing numbers, you know, so there's the affiliated members, the associate members, there's the full members and so on. And then the associate members split up into opposition groups and parish and town council groups. And it was just a way of sort of trying to, well, it was part of a discussion around the induction process, because, you know, we were quite early as a county council Labour and Co-op group joining the network, and it felt as though you were trying to jump onto a train that was already leaving the station. So you're really running to catch up, and you don't really understand the terminology, and you don't understand what's going on, and it takes a while to get your feet under the table. So the new induction process, I think, will help new councils come on board. But then it was sort of trying to make, if you like, sub-networks almost, and sounding boards, and just sharing challenges and problems. But it's the platform that you use for that, because, you know, Claire, we've said just how busy we've been over this period. You know, you leave your messenger messages or your WhatsApp messages until after you've done your emails and that sort of thing. And I just, you know, I think the idea of meeting face to face, even if it's only for an hour, you know, periodically, would just be good in order to sort of encourage more parish councils to join.
Quite agree with that one, very much so.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, I'll feed that back to Nicola and see if we can, you know, move forward on that, because I think we have got a very, very different perspective. You know, Adam and I both wear two hats in the sense that, you know, we're opposition group members and also, you know, controlling group members in different councils. And I just think, you know, we have a different perspective from the town parish community council point of view, that, you know, it might help us then to feed back to, you know, top tier councils. I was conscious of what Ray Evans said. I asked a question in that plenary session about, you know, parish councils and voluntary groups are the experts. Well, yeah, what kept you, you know, but it was interesting again that, you know, when I asked about how do you support them, it was, we let them do their own thing, which on one level is great, but, you know, why aren't top tier councils utilising the opportunity that parish councils give to them far more effectively? You know, that's just a, you know, one of those big questions. But I'll put that back to Nicola and see if we as our lovely little parishes can can meet more regularly. But certainly good to meet you, Claire. I've met Ken and Adam before. But shall we wrap it up now and go and have something to eat?
That sounds like a good
I'll
plan.
drink to that.
Thank you. It was lovely to meet you all. And
Yeah, good to meet you.
We'll see. I'll see you at one of tomorrow's sessions.
One of my best friends at university was from Billingham.
Oh wow!
Yeah, there you
There's
are.
not
So
very many people that have heard of it, to be honest.
I know where it is. I know exactly where it is because of that. But anyway, thanks, Adam, for doing all the techie stuff, and thanks to you all for thanks to you all, and see you again very soon.
Cheers.
Take care, everybody.
Okay, bye.
Bye.